call Kevin Davis.
Kelvin.
Kelvin, sorry.
Thank you.
Also.
Both of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll dedicate my 5 minutes to talking about corrections. And when we look at the annual review of corrections, well, where do we start? There's just a wealth of material to go on. So let me start where it needs to start, and that's with the Serco debacle. Corrections had a terrible year last year, and Serco was the poster boy for incompetence and mismanagement. I remember walking down the main street of Kaikohe in 2009, 2010, about that time when the government first mooted the idea of privatisation of prisons. And I walked down that main street of Kaikohe with corrections officers from Ngāwhā Prison. They said to me at the time, this is going to be a disaster. Privatisation of prisons doesn't work overseas. There's going to be more assaults, prisoner-on-prisoner assaults. There's going to be more prisoner-on-staff assaults. There's going to be a whole heap of things covered up. And let me tell you, every single prediction they made was 100% accurate. In fact, we couldn't have imagined that it would be worse, but it certainly was. It was about, 24th of June last year, we had the then Minister of Corrections in front of our select committee talking about the estimates, and even then he had his head in the sand talking about what a great job Serco was doing. Everything was fantastic. They've been monitored. It's swell. Within 7 months, Serco was gone. Their contract was not going to be renewed. Okay, so they're still managing it for the next 12 months, but basically all they're doing is just providing the staff to run Mount Eden Correction Facility. Corrections has taken it over, and so they should. Let me just remind everybody what the minister who set up Serco said in 2010, and of course that minister was Judith Collins. She stated in 2010, quote, Serco has a strong track record in managing prisons. I'm confident that the company will bring the high standards of professionalism, safety, rehabilitation and security expected by the government to Mount Eden, unquote. Well, aren't those famous last words? Everything she said in there has been totally wiped. Nothing that she said in terms of high standards of professionalism, of safety, of rehabilitation and security measured up to what she said in those at that time. And we've had the story of contraband being brought in. We've had the fight clubs. The fight clubs have been videoed and put on Facebook. Everything was a disaster. And now we're heading towards, the tough on crime rhetoric isn't working. We're heading towards a muster of 10,000 people in our prisons before the end of next year. And we start to wonder, well, why is it that our muster is getting so high? Well, let's take a look at the programs that they have in prisons. But first of all, and I'm reading from the annual report here, page 134 of the annual report, talking about the programs. The rates of some programs reported are small and below the level of statistical significance. Imagine that. Programs in prisons are performing, getting results below the level of statistical significance. In other words, they're not working. Then it goes on to say, however, this does not necessarily mean that the particular program has no impact on reoffending. Well, of course, a program only needs to help one person out of all the thousands and hundreds that might attend the program. It only has to help one person not to reoffend to say that it's having some positive effect. So, Mr. Speaker, that's just nonsense. The programs have what they call a rehabilitation quotient. And only one of the rehabilitation quotients when it comes to reconvictions or preventing reconvictions after a 12-month follow-up gets the double figures. There's one rehabilitation quotient for the re-imprisonment of offenders, and this is the Special Treatment Unit Child Sex Offender Program. It has a rehabilitation quotient of -2.2. So I thought, well, what does that actually mean? Because people will read the annual report and go, what do these figures actually say? So I asked written questions of the Minister. What does that figure minus 2.2 mean in terms of offenders? How many offenders has it helped? The answer was 2.
Mr. Chair.
I call the Honourable Amy